Hello everyone, my name is Dean and welcome back to the 20 and 20 challenge. This is week 5, part 3, I think. Last time we took a look at using get and post requests to get the items from our to-do list API into our React application and posting items to our API, which is built in Rails, and then getting that response back so we could add that to our to-do list application. Today we're going to take a look at styling the form a little bit so it doesn't look as bad. It still doesn't look great. I'm looking at it right now. Definitely does not look great. But after we style it, we're then going to add in some delete functionality, which will basically complete the requirements from last week. And hopefully this is sort of the best showcase of how easy it is to use something like React compared to using whatever we did last week. Because we're really just grabbing the item and we're just going to call delete on it out of the state. And when it re-renders everything, it's just going to disappear. So we don't have to do the document.findElementById remove the thing, etc. It's just as simple as updating our state on the client side, which is a little bit like updating your database on the server side. And then as soon as we update the state, it causes a re-render and just removes it for us. So there's really nothing that we have to think about there. As long as we're managing our state, the application's doing the work for us, basically. But that's the idea. Let's go ahead and let's jump into some code. Okay, so I'm thinking that what we can do today is we can start by styling the form a little bit using a grid, and then after we style the form, we'll style the list and add an ability to delete items from the list through an API call. So for this, we're probably going to have to come into our to-do list, and let's go ahead and full screen this and bump up the size so that you guys can see everything. The first thing we're probably going to do is come up to the top and we'll say import grid from, and then it's at MaterialUI core/grid. So that gets us access to the actual grid. And then we can come down to our render and we can change things around a little bit. So we'll start by changing this div to a grid. It takes a container and it has a spacing of 3. And then we'll also change this div down here to a grid to close this off. We then have a grid item around our to-do form. So we'll say grid item, and this is going to just be XS12. And this might look familiar if you've used Bootstrap before. It's basically the same thing as using your columns. Here it's just called grid item, and you're instead of saying like column-XS-12 or whatever, here it's just XS equals 12 inside of brackets. We then have our UL, and we do a well, I guess we can even change this UL itself, and we'll just give this a grid item XS is equal to 12, and then we can change this down here to a grid. And then the to-do item itself is probably okay for now. Let's now come into our to-do item, and in here we're also going to have to import grid from at material-UI/core/grid. So we'll say the grid is going to have the to-do item is going to have a grid. Again, it's a container, and its spacing is going to be 0. I guess we're styling the item first and not the form, but I guess it's kind of necessary to do it in this order, so I apologize for that. We're now going to do a grid with an item XS is 9. And we're doing this so that inside of here we can put our props, but we're not using an LI anymore. There's another component that we can use from Material called paper. So we're going to import paper from at MaterialUI core/paper. And this is basically just a white container that you can style a little bit. So it comes with an elevation option, and I'm going to set the elevation to, I guess I'll do 1 for right now. And then I'm just going to leave it like this. Oops, so let's get rid of this, and let's get rid of this LI. And then we'll just bump this up like that. And let's see how this looks right now. So if I come over here and I refresh, It's very hard to see, but there's like some ripples on the side of the items right now. So if I hit like F12, I should be able to grab one of these. Let me just zoom in to 150. You can see right here that there's this faint outline where, you know, this would look better if we had some margin or something. So what we can do is we can come up to the top here, and let me just full screen again. We can do an import and say import make styles from @MaterialUI/core/styles. And now down here we can say const use styles equals make styles. And then we do a parentheses and some braces. And then we can set the root style here to have a height of 3 EM, a padding of 2 EM, and a margin of 1 EM. So if we do this, we can then come down to the top of our function and we can just say const classes equals use styles. And this is just sort of convention for how most people do this. And then inside of our paper, we can say class name, which is how you give this a class, is equal to classes. So the variable we just declared dot root. So we're grabbing the root from the classes and we're assigning that to be the class name for this paper, or to give it one of the class names as the root. So I can do this, and now if we refresh, we should hopefully, yeah, so if I zoom out a little bit, you can see now we have a little bit of a bigger box here, but we can do a little bit better. So we have this, we have the styles being applied here, but if we change this elevation to say 3, I can save this, and you'll see that now we have a bit more of a shadow there. So it's not much, but you know, incremental changes are a good thing because they're usually safer than overhauling the whole system all at once. So now let's add in an HR. So I'll just save this, and you can see that should add this little line here. And then the next thing we'll do below this, we'll add in a button for deleting stuff. So we'll say import button from @MaterialUI/core/button again. And then for the actual button, I thought we could use an icon, but I think for that we have to actually do an import for the material icon. So let me look up like, so it looks like the command for npm is npm install @MaterialUI/icons. And for yarn, it's just yarn add MaterialUI icons. Took me a second to find one that actually had the command for both. So let's go ahead and let's run that command. So we'll kill the server, and I'm using npm, so I'm just going to run this command right here. So I'm going to type npm install @material-ui, and let me bump up the size again. I keep forgetting to do that. Npm install @MaterialUI/icons. So that should run a icon installer. And once that's done, we can come over, and I'll just full screen this while that's running. We can come over to our to-do item, and below the button or above it, doesn't really matter, we can say import delete icon from @MaterialUI/core/ or nope, not /core/icons/delete. So that gets us our delete icon, and I think that's basically everything we need from here for right now. So let's go ahead and let's restart the server. And let's add in this delete icon, or I guess delete button with an icon. It's a little confusing. We'll come down to right below this HR. In here we'll say button, and I'm just going to give ourselves some room here. We'll enter down into the next line, and we'll say the variant for the button is going to be contained. The color is going to be secondary. The size is going to be small. And the start icon is going to be delete icon. And then, it's also going to have an on click equal to handle delete. we're not going to do this right now, but we can at least create this function. So we'll say function handle delete, and this will just be like console.log you clicked delete. So hopefully that works. If we refresh the page, we now have the delete icon right here. Let's give this some text. So I guess we can just say like, let me just backspace, tab over, delete. Simple enough, gets the point across. So here you can see you now have this button that should fire a console once I click on it. So yeah, you click delete. So that's good. That, you know, that it's not the best styling in the world, but it's something. So that takes care of our to-do items. Let's now handle the form styling. So for this, we'll come over to our to-do form. We're also going to have to import grid in here as well. So we'll say import grid from @MaterialUI core/grid. And then we'll come down to our render. And instead of the div right here, we'll switch this to a grid again. And we'll say this is a grid container. And then we'll close this. And then we'll do, kind of want to bump it over. So we have the form hugging the left wall right now. Let's just create an empty grid item just to sort of force it over a little bit. And then we'll wrap the form inside of a grid item. XS is 10. So we'll grab this one and we'll put it right below the form. And then right below that, let's do another grid item XS. So that should just, you know, pop it over similar to like an offset. Now I am noticing that the button here looks a little weird. That's probably not going to change. We're going to have to, you know, probably change the styling on that. But let's see if we can change this task description a little bit. So let's full screen this. And then let me just bump all of this over and sort of fix the formatting a little bit. So we have our text field right here. Let's put a grid container around this. So we're going to put this around both the text field and the button, just so that it knows it exists inside of a container. And then let's say grid item XS equals 10. And I feel like right about now is probably a good time to point out that I'm not an expert at this. This is just what I found out while working on this over the course of like 3 days now. So if you do have any sort of optimizations here, I always appreciate that. And I'm sure the people in the comments do as well. So feel free to share, you know, a better snippet for how you would handle this, because I'm mostly just winging this whenever I do these styling things. But if we do the grid item XS10 around the text field and an XS2 around the button, and then if I save this, this should change things around a little bit. I didn't change the, because I didn't change the text field. So if we come into the text field, the other thing we have to do is set, what is it, like full width, I think. So if I save this, this bumps it over. So now it takes up the full width, as the name would indicate. But we also want to change the height of this button just so it sort of matches. So let's just, we haven't done any inline styling. We've done the classes, so I guess I can show you how to do that. So if you want to do inline styling, it's style equals, and then you open up your braces, but then you need another block for your actual style. And then inside of this, you can say the height is, inside quotes, 100%. And then if you wanted another one, I think you'd do like a comma, and then you'd say like width is, I don't know, like 30 or something. Because you're using the same sort of styling as you did in the class. So if I come up to the to-do item, yeah. So just like where we had the commas right here, instead of giving this a class name, it's the same thing as just having these braces. So that's why you need the commas there. And that's also why you're not doing like normal CSS where this wouldn't be in quotes, I think, because it's a little bit different. It's, you know, same, but different, as some of the kids are saying these days. So let's get rid of this width. I feel like the grid item should handle the width itself. So that looks good. And I think that just about handles this form. So this should still work. So let's add a new item. Yeah, so that still works. And if we click delete, it'll run the console log. So now we have the form styled and the items styled. They're not lining up right now. We'll take care of that probably next episode where we do some more serious cleanup, but I just wanted to get this working so that we at least have a delete button right now so that we can work with that, and the form was bothering me being all bunched up. So hopefully this is okay with you guys for right now. Let's come into our to-do list, and let's pass in a function to actually delete things. So we'll pass in something called like delete item equals this dot delete item, and we do have to actually create this function. So let's go up to the top right here, and we'll just say this dot delete item equals this dot delete item dot bind this, and then let's actually create this. So below the update to-do list, we'll just say delete item. This will probably have to take in an item, and then we'll just we'll delete the item remotely, then delete it here, because we'll pass the request over to the server, and then the server will do something, and then we'll be like, okay, it's gone from the server, but the item still exists right here. So what we have to do then is we have to grab it and say, okay, this is let's add a new item. We click delete, so then we have to actually delete it like that. So we have to do it from the back end and from the front end. So let's go ahead, and we passed it in right here. Let's now go into our to-do item, which is where we're actually going to call this onClick function, the handle delete. And then in here, inside the handle delete, this is actually pretty easy because we already pass in the item as a prop because we're grabbing its task right here. So let's just say props.delete item, which is the parent function's delete item. And then we'll just pass in props.item. So it's just passing in a reference to itself. And then we can come into our to-do list and our delete item function. So we're already taking in the item. That's good. Let's handle deleting the item. So for this, because we're using a Rails API, we need the delete URL, which is just the API URL plus slash item.id, I think, because you'd have something like localhost 3001 slash API slash v1, which is your API URL. No, it's slash to-dos. And then that's your API URL plus slash 13 to delete the 13th item. I think that's how it works. So I think that's what this format is right here. And then we just have to do we'll say fetch delete URL. Let's actually change this because this is bothering me a little bit. Let's make this all caps, and then delete URL. And then we need to pass in a method for the delete. So we'll say method is delete, and the body is just going to be the item. Although I don't even know if that's necessary. Let's maybe leave that off. So that should handle that. And then I guess we can do dot then, because we're following our comment structure right here. So we'll say dot then, and let's call an anonymous function. We'll just say we need to handle the client side deleting here. So client side delete, and then let's get rid of this. And let's just leave it like this for right now to see if we can actually remotely delete something. So let's come down to, I don't know, number 7 is last. Okay, so that got deleted from the database. You can see that right here. But there's no response here. If I refresh, this will be gone. So let me just zoom into 150 so you can see. So this number 7, which is below the 8 and the 6, should be gone if I refresh. Yes, so now we have number 6 and number 8. All we have to do now is make sure this gets deleted. And the way we can do that, once again, is just going to be by updating the state. So we have, let's grab a copy of the state items. So we'll just say var underscore items equals this dot state dot items. And just as a point, you could do something like call dot filter, and then just filter where the item is not equal to the passed in item. But we're doing this a bit more verbosely just to sort of illustrate what you're doing here. So we have all of our items. We then want an index, which is going to be from our items array, get the index of the item we passed in. So let's say this has like it has an ID of 34, but it's the 6th item that we added. So this is going to give us, the ID of 6 inside of our items array. And then we can call _items.splice, and we'll splice at that index, and we'll just pop off one element. And if I hover over this, actually, it was showing me what the documentation for this is. So here we're just saying the number of elements to remove, so we're removing 1. So we grab the start number, and then we just remove 1. So we start at like 6, and then we remove 1 element. So it's just the 6th element being removed. And then we can just say this.setState, and we'll set the state of the items to be this temporary items. And if you'll remember, whenever we do this, it's going to fire the render again. So it deletes it from our state, and then down here, it re-renders the items container, and it just doesn't render that one because it doesn't exist in the state anymore. So we don't have to deal with finding this item by ID on the page or trying to find like the item by the React key or any of that nonsense. So if I refresh the page, although it probably did that for me, and I delete number 6 here, it just pops off the page. It's just as simple as that. So that's your delete functionality. So now we can just delete all of these, and you can see down here every time I click, it's deleting one of them from the database as well. And that gets rid of all of them. So we'll just say this is our only to-do for the day. I'll hit add task, and there you go. That is deletion and styling and all of my windows disappearing all at once. And how long was that? That was 20 minutes, 22 minutes, give or take. Okay, so that's going to do it for me. If this video helped you, remember to like it. If this video didn't help you, remember to dislike it so we don't subject other people to it. It's sort of the pitch I make every week. Hopefully you guys are, doing your part, and this goes for other videos as well. It always helps to see if a video has helped other people. It at least helps me decide if I even want to watch a video when I first load it up. If there's like an 80% like ratio, I know that probably the 20% were far more honest, and I'm not going to be watching this video if I have another choice. But yeah, I'm going to be making these videos for another 15 weeks, and after that we'll have some other stuff coming, I'm sure. So I'd consider subscribing, if you enjoyed this type of content. There's plenty more coming. And I think that's it for my elevator pitch today, so I'm going to go ahead and cut to the outro. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.